Stories of epic revenge from Reddit forum users will get what they deserve here. How we ruined the life of the teacher and the principal of the school. I apologize in advance if some details are unclear, because it happened almost 14 years ago. It all started when I was 12 years old. My 7th grade teacher, who was 46 years old at the time, was notorious for bullying and, in my opinion, insulting his students. He was a stickler for strict discipline at school. The man was responsible for tracking latecomers and punishments. At that time, we suspected that the reason he never got fired, or was that his disciples were too scared to report it, or that the headmaster was his son. I hated this teacher because he constantly made ambiguous remarks about people of other nationalities, complained about the new South Africa, and constantly recalled how his life was better before. It always seemed to me that I had problems in my relationship with this man because I am a Muslim. He once joked in front of the whole class about how funny Muslim women look with their heads wrapped up. His jokes about Muslims not eating bacon were endless. Once a teacher stood in front of my desk on purpose and ate panini with cheese and bacon. The dude often ranted about the fact that the school is no longer a purely Christian institution as it was before. He said these things and looked either at me, my twin sister, or at the black students in the classroom. When it was his birthday, Mom advised me to buy him a gift. I spent my pocket money, which was already limited, to buy him a large bar of chocolate and a long piece of dried sausage. During the day, the teacher received gifts from the students of his class and other people. The professor would get up from the table to greet and thank them, and then shake their hand. However, when I gave him my present, all he did was look at me for a second, turned away and nodded slightly. I remember being grateful that I didn't reach out to shake his hand because I thought he might have ignored it in front of the whole class. To say that I felt like trash is to say nothing. The experience that made me hate him the most happened shortly before we wrote the exams for the 2nd or 3rd semester. I was walking with my friend David back from the store during the intermission. We turned between English classes and kindergarten and saw a group of boys huddled together. One of them came up to us, and I saw that he was holding one of those camping multifunctional tools with a folding knife, and immediately got scared. The boy told us, "Give me your things before I try this thing on you." And then he started laughing and went back to his friends. It was obviously a joke, but David was close to crying, and I was very scared of what he did. I told the guy that he shouldn't wear these things at school, and that I was going to tell my teacher about it. We went straight to him, and when they spoke, David burst into tears. I told the peasant what had happened. Our teacher barely looked up from the computer while we were talking, and when he asked the guy's name, we told him the name, and he said he would sort it out, and that we would go on break again. I went home and told my mom, who I thought didn't fully believe me at the time. The next day we saw that Xander, the bully, was ridiculed us for the fact that he got in trouble with our teacher, and probably it will exclude or leave on duty Saturday as punishment. It is clear that this was sarcasm. He laughed at us and said that in fact our teacher came to his class, asked to talk to them, told him never to bring it to school again. No detention in principle, nothing. We were so upset that we went back to our homeroom teacher, and I accused him that Xander had not been punished in any way. He gave me the coldest look and coldly told me that only people who were not born Americans deserve special punishment. Only they need to be monitored. And it's not enough for us citizens to have problems because of people like us. I felt betrayed by my teacher because this is the person who was supposed to make us feel safe while we were away from home. When I talked about it with my friends, they told me that Xander was actually the son of the principal, that is, he was my teacher's nephew. I decided to take the opportunity to talk to my friends about getting evidence that our teacher treats students unfairly. 3 of my 4 close friends had camera phones. I was sitting in the far left corner. My one friend was sitting in the opposite corner by the door. Our other friend was sitting in the middle. And the last one was right at the end of the classroom, by the window on the left. One thing about our teacher, he didn't care where we were sitting as long as we answered him when he did the roll call. And no one bothered when we switched places. We came to an agreement that whenever our teacher would say something ambiguous, we would all imperceptibly take it on video. Any personal conversation we had with him was recorded on our phones. We caught him on camera telling a very unpleasant joke about black Indians and other nationalities. The incident of the month, we decided that we can no longer allow the insults. One of our friends was a dark-skinned guy named Tatendo. Kotendo was a troubled child. His mother died when he was 4 years old, and his father was an alcoholic. Basically, he was raised by his uncle, who was not the most prosperous. Totendo especially got on the nerves of our teachers, not only because he was black, but also because he brought broken calculators from home and disassembled them during the lesson. One day our teacher told him to clear the table and throw away the pieces of plastic and the calculator. He ignored the teacher. Then the teacher started yelling at him. And Totendo did the only logical thing a 12 to 13-year-old child would do in such a situation. He mockingly put 2 pencils in my ears. Our teacher lost his temper, grabbed Totenda, and threw him at the door. And I almost cried when my friend, who was sitting behind me, said that all this was captured on camera. First, we showed Uncle Totenda's video. Then I showed my mom all the other videos and recordings. She was furious. One of my friends sent it all to his older sister, who had a Facebook account, and she posted it there, and tagged the school and all the parents she knew. Parents and people from all over the province called the school and demanded answers about what would happen to our teacher. He was immediately suspended. There were rumors that he had to go into hiding because Tatenda's uncle and his friends wanted to destroy him. I even met Tatenda's father for the first time in a few weeks after it all started. He liked to joke that his father sobered up specifically for this. The principal kicked Xander out of school. We never saw him again. My mom told me that an investigation had been launched against the school. We saw our teacher only once after he was suspended. He looked badly beaten. He was accompanied by police officers and 2 other male teachers so that he could collect the remains of his belongings in the classroom. Today, my family is part of a non-profit organization that has a charity-free cafe for the homeless all over the country. On the last Friday of February, I stand guard over security as usual because we have few volunteers, a lot of homeless people, and most of them take banned substances and can be dangerous. I take turns walking to make sure there are no fights or anything that could cause a riot, and I see a familiar face. My old director is standing in line, waiting for a plate of stew and bread, completely unaware of who is standing next to him. Obviously he wouldn't have recognized me, but I never forgot his face. After seeing him, I returned to the feelings I had when I was 12 years old, in the 7th grade. And I tried to use all the excuses not to go to school. So yes, who is still reading this story? This is the end of how my friends and I ruined the life of my teacher and principal. Just revenge in the courtroom. Now I am a graduate student of a large state university. This unpleasant event happened to me in the first year of study, as soon as the semester began. Being a stupid freshman, I carelessly threw myself into a relationship with a peer who lived in the room directly above me. Let's call her Megan. A lot of guys in our house hated Megan because of her behavior, because she talked too much and almost exclusively about himself. Right after Thanksgiving weekend, at the end of the evening class, my mom called me. She noticed unusual activity on my checking account. I rarely had to buy anything during the semester. Therefore, I was very puzzled to find that $1,500 left my bank account within 2 weeks, in the form of food orders at Grubhub and some other purchases at clothing stores. At that time, I fully trusted Megan, but still immediately decided to ask a friend about the missing money. She denied any involvement in this and suggested that I simply cancel my debit card to prevent further embezzlement of funds. After a very long phone call to the bank, he did so. Then I contacted the restaurant's support service on Twitter. My card was stolen these days and was used to order food at your company. Can I get a receipt? A representative of this service sent me the first and last receipts. Megan's name was clearly visible on both forms. Moreover, the latest time of receipt was only 2 hours ago. She was probably still eating when I blocked my card. I texted her again. I have a receipt from Grubhub. Are you sure you didn't make these orders? Her response was overly cheeky. You're really stupid if you suspect me. I sent a message to the girl about the complete breakup of the relationship and calmed down with the thought that I would not be able to return $1,500. At least I was unharmed myself, right? Less than 2 days later, Megan walked into my room when I wasn't expecting her at all. I was sitting thoughtfully at my desk and just happened to notice that the girl was standing silently behind me. She spoke when I looked at her. Give me my things. Where are my things? I didn't understand any of what was said. What kind of jokes, what kind of things? She left soon after, and I locked the door, because, obviously, this is not the last visit of the abnormal. Megan came back a minute later. She was standing at my door, knocking and demanding that I let her in. The real banging quickly turned into a stronger rumble. Megan rattled the handle of my door for quite a long time. Then she began to throw her shoulder at her, rushing forward with force, as if trying to break down a barrier. I lived next door to the person responsible for the order on the floor, but judging by the absence of any interference, he was now in another place. I had to pull out my phone and text the guy to send the attendants. Meanwhile, I watched as my light wooden door buckled under the blows of a mad woman. My neighbor was on duty in another building, so he asked 3 of his colleagues to sort out the scandalous situation. The guys brought Megan down to the commandant's room, where she told me that she only needed a t-shirt and a keychain that she gave me for my birthday. What nonsense! I gave it all away without delay. I still wanted such an outrage to end as soon as possible. However, as soon as I shared this story with the permanent staff of the campus, they submitted to the university documents to prevent all contact between me and Megan. They also recommended contacting the campus police, whose representative advised me to go to the small claims court to get my stolen money back. At the request of the campus police, I also contacted the university office, sending them a message about everything that happened. The management was interested to know the details for completeness. Megan was charged with 3 counts of misconduct, theft, threats, and incitement to non-interference by university staff. She tried to put pressure on Petey, blaming me for this situation, and begged me not to move forward, even offered money. A university representative has asked me to appear as a witness at Megan's disciplinary hearing next semester. I tentatively agreed right before the hearing date was set for February 14th. Valentine's Day also thought it was a kind of joke. All this time, my ex kept telling a distorted version of the whole story everywhere, trying to turn my friends against me. So when I found out that she was dating a new boyfriend, I was pleased with the feeling that the disciplinary hearing on the day of love ruined any plans for the evening that the 2 of them could build. I arrived at the disciplinary commission office alone, not knowing what to expect from a strange event. The board consisted of graduate students, and the hearing, apparently, was supposed to last late. Unlike me, Megan didn't come alone. She brought her parents with her as witnesses to the events. It didn't even need that here. It was not a real courtroom, as you will soon realize. And that's not all. Megan's parents also paid a lawyer to defend her against the charges. Honestly, in response, the members of the commission offered me, free of charge, legal representation of a junior specialist in economics, whom we will call Jimmy. This guy has already read my version of the story, and thanks to the screenshots with the Grubhub receipts, he said that there is a good proof of her guilt. Then I additionally told him what I had kept secret for several months when Megan tried to break down my door. I pulled out my phone to write to my neighbor, after which I filmed everything that was happening, present in the room like crazy. At that moment I realized that Megan really managed to convince everyone that I was a vile liar. In her version of the story, I myself gave her permission to buy food using my account. She told her parents that she politely asked me for her things, which I brazenly hid from her in my room. In Megan's presentation, I looked like a sociopath trying to ruin her reputation. Her parents much freaked out when watching the video and came on to me with words, "Why didn't you tell us that you shoot this video? Why did you do that?" Jimmy, now my new best friend, was just trying not to laugh out loud. The council found Megan guilty on all 3 charges. My side of the defenders recommended that the university terminate her housing contract and force the thief to pay compensation. The reckoning has been made. Megan's family returned most of the stolen money. The girl was forced to move to another dormitory building. Where is she now? The last I heard, Megan went back to school as a part-time student, but I never saw her again. This story happened when we lived in Florida in the early 90s. Hopefully, this will be considered nuclear revenge. At that time, South Florida was devastated by Hurricane Andrew. My dad is a member of a local charity. He often spent time at the city market collecting donations from customers so that caring people could help those affected by the disaster. My father was actually disabled due to a serious car accident. He was hit by a drunk driver. In the early 80s, he suffered from constant pain in his hip and back. But the painful condition did not harden my father. He was kind and responsive to the pain of others, so he was engaged in charitable activities. One day, my father went to the local market, wanted to buy a few things to donate to a charity organization. Right before he is about to park in the area reserved for disabled cars, a young lady drives into this space in her shiny red Porsche. My dad stops behind her and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, I was going to stop there and stand on this platform myself." He also points to a disabled person's warning poster on the windshield. The girl looked at her father arrogantly and answered rudely, "You don't look disabled." She turned around and went to the store. Anyone who has a relative who uses a place for the disabled will understand my father's frustration with this situation and the anger he felt. My dad, at first glance, calmly waited until the girl came to the store and then got out of the car and cut the valve stem on all 4 tires, leaving them in sight but not thrown away. Then he drove off to another place not far from the Porsche and just sat in the car waiting. About 15 minutes later, the girl returned to the playground to her car, saw the flat tires, and started yelling that vandals had made fun of her Porsche. My father was at a sufficient distance from the girl, she could not see him. But he perfectly heard all the lamentations of the impudent woman. She took out her phone and started calling the police. It was a big mistake on her part. The police quickly responded to the call. The patrol officer got out of the police car. The cop didn't listen to the girl. He immediately issued her a fine for parking her car without a permit sign on the glass on the disabled area. About $500 at the time. The police left. The girl called the emergency service and called a tow truck. A truck has arrived. When Porsche girl raised on a tow truck, my father came near and said with a smile, "You don't look disabled, but your car is limping." He drove on. Curses of the offended lady flew after him. My father is generally a good man, but he can turn into a real savage when forced. A little background. My father was an honest man and a hard worker who worked tirelessly to provide for our family. Dad was a truck driver. Despite the fact that he was very tired on endless trips, Dad was not used to complaining. He was carried away in himself and never shared with us how hard he earned a piece of bread. Last summer, I had the opportunity to get to work with him and see with my own eyes the conditions in which he worked. During the time spent together in the cab of the truck, I know her father much better. We have become even closer and closer to each other. We spent a lot of time traveling, sometimes for 16 hours in a row. I have repeatedly asked him to stop and take a break. And every time my father answered me that he couldn't do it, he shouldn't break the schedule. After a month of working with him, my father confessed to me why he could not take a break before arriving at his destination. The reason was that if the driver stopped for a break and violated the traffic schedule, he would be fired immediately. I told my father that it was illegal and he should go to the police with evidence. But Dad didn't want to do that. The boss told everyone that if one of the drivers went to the police, he would not only fire this employee, but also make sure that he never found another job. I was shocked by this admission. I understood that my father provided for our family at the cost of his health. The conversation was so painful for the father that tears appeared in his eyes. My dad, whom I have never seen weak, cried like a little child. He said through tears that he loved us very much, that he would rather die than let us starve and suffer deprivation. Therefore, he could not lose his job, and held onto it with his teeth, despite the inhumane working conditions. I understood why my father refused to rest during trips, and asked him to be careful. This conversation took place 3 months ago. Then I got a call from our local police department, and was informed about the death of my father. He drove his truck right into the steel barrier, and died instantly. I was furious. Scoundrel boss, this piece of dirt threatened my father, which led to his death, and now he's going to get away with it. I couldn't exist in peace. The thought of communication haunted me day and night. A week passed before a plan of revenge appeared in my head. All truck drivers have a temporary map with their names on it, something like an identifier. I remembered perfectly well that my father also had such a card, and the boss gave them another card. The second card was for the police, who check the trucks on the road, that the driver has not committed violations while on the move without a break for more than 4 hours. If the police stop you, check the card and reveal violations, punishment will follow. So I thought that if I want to sue my father's boss for unbearable working conditions, violations of the law, labor rights, and much more, I must have evidence from these cards. I wrote a statement to the police asking them to open a case, and I was right. The process was extremely short. I've hired a good lawyer. He gathered all the necessary evidence to present the case, and last Thursday, my father's boss was found guilty of 5 of the 7 charges that were brought against him. Our family received $5 million in compensation for the death of his father. Yesterday I found out that this man lost his house after the trial. His wife kicked him out. Although we received a lot of money, I still believe that my father died for pennies. I still don't have the satisfaction I craved, but at least our family won't starve. I love you, Dad. Cat, well, this is generally some kind of tin. Recently I had to hire a contractor, which I soon regretted very much. He stole $18,000 from me. I went to court against the fraudster, but he was acquitted. Because his business is not legitimate, the contractor's name was not tied to him. Thus, he got off with a slight fright. I was left with nothing. I was furious because it was all my savings. Under the influence of resentment against the whole world, I began to hunt on the internet for ideas of revenge, and found one suitable option. I have compiled letters and posters. Yes, letters and posters are my real weapon of revenge. I prepared as many of them as I could by papers, found a picture of the offender, and put it on the poster. He added a warning text that this person is connected with crimes involving minors. Multiplied posters, and enclosed them in letters that he sent to the neighbors of this deceiver. Everyone who received the letters and saw my flyers hung up believed it. People don't double-check things, let alone stop thinking logically when their children are in danger. The whole neighborhood where this dude lived rallied against him. He stopped getting a job. No one wanted anything to do with him. People took the warning, looked at this big, sullen man, and shied away from him. I understand that this is not a completely normal act, and I have gone too far. But all the same, I do not regret anything. I am not tormented by remorse at all. A story of epic revenge from a woman who was betrayed. This is the story of my mother's friend, and I had to ask permission to tell it here. Mom's friend, let's call her Anna, was married to a man we thought was a fraud. There were good reasons for this. Several unpleasant stories with his participation became known to us. This is one of them. The man had a personal Porsche convertible, his favorite and expensive toy. This car was his pride and joy. He cared about her like a little baby. The husband always made his wife admire his beautiful car, but she did not share his emotions and was not fond of cars. At some point, Anna found out that her husband was cheating on her with a young woman with whom he worked together. Sometimes, when the weather was right, he would take his mistress for a walk, pick her up in a Porsche. They would go into the woods, and do you know what in the car? The woman was furious, but did not immediately divorce. because their daughter had only 4 months left before graduation, and she did not want to expose the girl to additional stress. Nevertheless, Anna's offended vanity was hungry for revenge, so she bought a very intense warming cream, which became terribly burning when heat and water acted on it. It is better not to use this remedy if you want to take a bath later in the day. After her husband went to work on Friday, Anna went to the garage and carefully polished the leather seat of the Porsche. With this warming cream, she looked at her work from the side and made sure that the seats in the car look very nice and smooth. When the husband returned home, his wife surprised him by telling him that she had cleaned the car seat and carefully polished them. He was happy that his wife had finally shown interest in his doll and was smiling contentedly as everything was going well. The next day, Saturday, the man left the garage. He went alone, did not consider it necessary to tell Anna where he was going. But she knew that he would pick up an employee at the appointed place. It was a nice sunny day, warm, even hot. Surely the leather seats warmed up well under the scorching rays of the sun. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what happened when the man left. We can only guess. But when the unfaithful husband returned, he was furious, slammed the car door, and quickly rushed straight to the shower. Anna said that she reached the peak of satisfaction when she saw that his back was bright red and looked quite sad. Of course, the shower made the man's painful condition even harder. Anna watched her husband suffering with complete indifference and did not even try to help him. He never spoke to her about it afterwards. But from that day on, he always kept the car locked and took the keys when he left. She divorced her husband the day after her daughter graduated from school. "Don't touch my phone, or you'll get what you deserve. I am married to a wonderful woman. She is smart, funny, and very kind. Her mother is a very nice lady, treats me well. Sometimes she becomes a prude, sometimes she gets angry, but on the whole, she is quite a tolerant mother-in-law. If my wife accidentally leaves her phone in a prominent place, my mother-in-law, if she is in our house, immediately grabs it and starts viewing messages. My wife doesn't take it seriously. She has been used to her mother's constant control since she was very young. I am not a supporter of this behavior, because my wife and I sometimes write about things that are not intended for other people's eyes, which her mother should not see. I do think that the way to do naughty things. At Christmas, we invited relatives to sit at the festive table. I noticed my wife put her phone on the shelf of the kitchen cabinet. At the same moment, a brilliant idea of revenge appeared in my head. I knew that my wife went to the guests, and my mother-in-law stayed in the kitchen. Surely she was already holding her daughter's phone in her hands, without changing a long-standing habit. I wrote for his wife with naughty text, with a detailed description of all the actions that I was going to do with her in our bedroom when it's all gone. To be honest, I lied a lot when listing love joys. We've never done anything like this. But I wanted to stun a curious woman like my mother-in-law was. I sent a message from the bathroom. I froze. Listening, it seemed to me that there was a beep in the kitchen. When I walked into the living room, my wife's mom avoided looking me in the eye. She quietly whispered to her daughter that she wanted to talk to her alone. They went into the other room together. My wife came back into the living room. She looked excited, her face covered with red spots, with her hands covering her mouth. At first I thought she was crying, but when I got closer, I realized that my beloved was barely restraining herself from laughing at the top of her voice. Immediately after the conversation with her daughter, the mother-in-law was going home, followed by the rest of the guests. Only then did my wife tell me that her mother had given her a real interrogation. She asked me if my daughter was being coerced, if I was a monster, and how often I sent such a message. My wife courageously listened to all the nonsense that the elderly woman was carrying. She carefully read my message with the most serious expression on her face, then briefly replied that this was our personal matter and did not concern anyone else. I thought it was a good idea to play the mother-in-law. It felt like I got a gift for Christmas. My plan of perfect revenge worked with a bang. My ideal revenge plan is an auto repair shop. A small local business changed its phone number for some unknown reason. A few months later, when my family ran a telephone line into the house, We got this number. There were no problems at the beginning. Almost all of the customers of this workshop had a new phone number. We were rarely bothered with calls about repairs, but after about 6 months, they started calling us several times a day and agreeing on car repairs or buying spare parts. When the calls became too annoying, I asked the caller where he got this number from. He immediately told me that he had seen it on a billboard installed on the building of an auto repair shop. The number was written in large numbers and was easy to remember. I didn't believe it. The next day, I drove the car along the specified route and made sure that I heard the truth. Our phone number was printed in big blue numbers. I returned home, dialed the current number of the auto repair shop, and called the owner when the phone was picked up at the other end. I said, "Hello. I noticed that the old phone number is still listed at the top of your building. We get a lot of calls from your customers. You can fix it or paint over the numbers. That's your problem. We don't have time to deal with trifles." When I heard this boorish answer, the phone was immediately hung up, interrupting the conversation. Okay, let's think about how to get out of the situation. My thoughts on this matter did not last long. To fight so to fight. And I set in motion my nuclear revenge plan. I started answering customer calls. A woman called. I informed her that we have a special offer for tires. She can get a complete set for $75. On average, it cost about $200. Then there was a call from a guy who needed to completely redo the transmission in the car and asked how quickly we could do it, and answered him that there was not much work in the workshop at the moment. Everything will be done quickly, and by noon he will pick up his car if he gives it to repair now. There is a good master working there. He will do everything for a penny. This repair will cost the guy $750. Funny super cheap price. There have been 20 or more such calls in a week. 7. I promised unrealistic discounts and fabulous repairs. Then they stopped. Customers of the auto repair shop no longer called us. This topic was closed. I decided to take a ride to a familiar building. From afar, I noticed a huge shield painted with white paint. I am sure that the owner has lost almost $1,000, appeasing angry customers who considered themselves deceived. That's how good always wins over evil. Instant karma with snow. It happened 2 years ago. It was snowing heavily, so I went out into the yard to clear the driveway and a place for the car from the snow. My son was about to come home from work. He's a policeman. I had already done a lot of work on snow removal near the house and had almost finished cleaning the playground, when an unknown girl drove up in a car and parked in the cleared place. She saw me shoveling snowdrifts, but defiantly parked her car. I turned to her and asked her to leave for another place. He explained that he had cleared the area for his son's car. The girl didn't pay any attention to me. She completely ignored my presence. Calmly got out of the car and went to her house. It turns out that she lived not far away, just 2 houses away from us. I've never parked a car in this place before. At that time, a snowplow was working in our residential complex. The guy from the cockpit saw everything that was happening from beginning to end. He drove up to me on his equipment, helped to remove all the snow from a large snowdrift that had formed after clearing the road. He piled the whole pile of snow on the car of an impudent girl. The chic wheelbarrow was completely filled in. It was impossible to get to the door handles. Then the guy cleared a large area for my son's car. I later watched a picture of a girl trying to free her car. She didn't even have a shovel in her hands, but didn't offer to help. Evil must be punished. This will be a good lesson for the future. After all, arrogant people should get what they deserve. Sweet revenge at the gas station. An unpleasant thing happened to me last night. I got in the car to go to my girlfriend. I noticed that the tire pressure indicator lit up on the panel. There was a 12-volt air compressor in the trunk, but it is very noisy and slowly pumps air. So I decided to go to the local gas station. Air pumps can be used there for free. Therefore, the usual picture at the gas station, when several cars lined up in a row, waiting for their turn. But I drove up and saw only one car in front of me. I was lucky. I fell in behind a guy who was already pumping tires. At that moment, a BMW pulled up behind me. An elderly man. 3 minutes later, a woman in a brand new Lexus pulls right up to me and rolls down the window. She turned to me. "I only need to fill one tire. Would you mind if I walked ahead of you? There aren't really that many cars here. We can wait a bit." The woman closed the window, and I also picked up the glass. After about a minute, the guy released the pump and stepped aside. Before I could start the engine, a woman in a Lexus puts her car diagonally in front of me, preventing me from driving up. Then it goes straight to the pump. As soon as the first car drove off, she got out of the car and cast a worried look in my direction. In the same second, my incipient anger evaporated. I became calm and focused like a ninja. An epic revenge plan has matured in my head. I knew exactly what needed to be done. I moved my car forward and stopped 6 inches from the rear bumper of the Lexus. The air pump is located in the corner of the plot, fenced with a curb. There was also a curb in front of the woman. My dirty car was parked right next to her posh car. The woman was busy pumping up the tire and did not notice that I stopped dangerously close to her shiny new car. I got out of the car, took my air compressor out of the trunk, and started setting it up for work. A man sitting in a BMW, silently watching my actions, asked me if I could fill up the tires on his car with my compressor. He smiled. I accepted the joke and replied, "Of course. Just drive closer." He offered the man to park in an empty space to the left of the Lexus. As soon as the BMW moved to the specified position, the woman noticed what was happening and began to loudly protest. I turned on my compressor and started filling the tire. The noise from his work easily covered the screams of the woman. It was the sound of justice. The cheeky girl immediately ran up to me. Her face was red with anger, as if smeared with beet juice. She was shouting something, throwing dirty curses at me, and calling me all unflattering words. Droplets of saliva dribbled between teeth yellow from cigarette smoke. I stood with a straight face, waited a moment's pause in the stream of insults, and calmly said, "Ma'am, I need to fill the air just the same bus. Do you mind?" Mr. BMW watched this scene with pleasure, as if a wonderful performance was being played out in front of him. The woman almost resigned herself and waited for me to finish the process. But when she saw me carrying my compressor to the man's car, she instantly exploded like a volcano. What we just did not hear in our address, "scoundrels" and "pieces of stinking shit," were the mildest expressions. I silently pumped up the BMW tire. He thanked me for my help and got into the car. The smile did not leave the man's face, it only turned the woman on even more. The BMW pulled out, vacated the seat to the left of the woman's car. I slowly took the compressor and put it in the trunk. I got into the car and turned on the radio, looked for a good song. Then I set the climate control to a comfortable temperature. All this time, a nervous lady stood in front of me and waited for me to drive away. Calmly rolled back, doused her with exhaust fumes a little, and sped off into the night. It was perfect instant karma. A cake made of habanero pepper and wasabi sauce. My college dorm roommate didn't know how to cook and wash dishes. Almost never went to the grocery store. In the end, he started eating the dishes I cooked, always cleaning up the leftovers, as they were left for later cooking. I've always done the preparations for the week, so as not to run for groceries in the store every day, as it is inconvenient, and came out more. So I asked him to stop eating me, stop and be a decent neighbor. The guy's behavior has not changed, despite a convincing request not to touch my food. He seemed to destroy her even more. To punish him for his impudence, I made a cake with habanero pepper, and I knocked down the glaze with sauce in the siege. I marked the cake with my name, wrote a note not to touch it, and waited. This guy has a very low tolerance for spicy foods. I thought that he would take the first bite and quickly realize that it is no longer possible to eat an unusual cake. A day later, when I was at work, a neighbor invited his friends to visit. They got drunk, and the guy decided to dig into my refrigerator. A neighbor found a very attractive-looking cake. Somehow these instances managed to eat almost a third of it before tasted the taste. The guys drank a lot of water, tears poured from their eyes like hail. All the booze and pieces of cake were begging to come out. They didn't have time to run to the toilet. The party was a success. When a neighbor asked me why I had prepared such a monstrous treat, I replied that I had found a recipe for chocolate habanero on the internet and decided to try to cook it. He added that I have many more interesting recipes for original dishes. After this incident, the neighbor stopped carrying my food. My epic revenge plan worked. Epic revenge from a school bus driver. This story happened many years ago. I worked as a school bus driver every school day. A really disgusting, noisy group of children from middle and high school appeared in the cabin. The guys often touched the emergency exit handles, which caused the alarm to go off. I stopped the bus right away. I had to get up and check every location where you installed this box until you turn off the signal. The problem was that I couldn't catch the intruder in any way, because I didn't see which of the guys was doing it. Even approaching the children sitting in the seats next to the emergency alarm, I did not know who was the violator of the movement. None of the hooligans have ever personally confessed. The witnesses did not want to betray their friends. This outrage lasted for some time. I tried to do something to prevent violations. Translating children who were in the seats with the included alarm on the seat next to the driver. They were always in sight and sitting still. The suspects were in front all week as punishment. But the emergency light was still on. Suddenly it dawned on me, and I had an idea. Before my departure on the route, I took Vaseline and greased the huge balls under the handle, but tried not to make it conspicuous. I've set up a trap under every emergency alarm lever. This way the students could see a thick layer of a substance resembling mucus. But if they touched it when they tried to pull the handle, they would immediately feel the ointment on their hands. It's done. The mousetrap was waiting for the mouse. Everything went as usual. It was very hot that day, so the Vaseline warmed up a lot. There was even more slime than I expected. All the children crowded into the bus. We were already moving along the route for several minutes when the alarm suddenly went off. At the same moment, everyone heard the girl's loud scream. "My God, what is it?" "Ugh." I smiled and stopped the bus. He got up from his seat, approached her and said sternly, "Well, did you get caught?" The hooligan continued to scream. She looked at her hand with horror, wanting to know what kind of substance it was, similar to snot. I dropped her off the bus and banned her from traveling for 2 weeks, and then for the rest of the school year. The lover of pulling the alarm handle had to sit next to the driver's seat. After this demonstration lesson, there were no more similar cases of hooliganism in the salon. Punishment for a bad teacher. This story will not end like the others, but I will tell it anyway. I studied in the 11th grade. My academic performance was average. C and B were basically my constant grades. Accidentally came across D also appeared occasionally. But there was one subject I always had a good eye. This is English. At least, I personally thought so. From the first day we met, the teacher, whom we will call Mrs. Brown, seemed to dislike me immediately. Because I was one of those students who almost did not pay attention to their studies. That is, he usually didn't do most of his homework, but somehow managed to pass all the tests. Miss Brown was the teacher who gave out our report cards and progress reports. She knew that at that time I was not doing very well in some compulsory classes, with the exception of English, for which I had a good bye. The moment of handing over the final documents in class came. The teacher looked at me contemptuously, took my report card in her hands to pass it to me, but instead stopped in the center of the room, raised the document above her, and began to poke her finger at those few lines where I fail in academic performance. Miss Brown loudly suggests that the whole class should see what a bad student's report card looks like. I was really upset, but did not complain to your parents or director, as the thought that this will not help me. The next day, when I was in English class, I was told to immediately arrive at the vice principal's office. As a student, I was a good disciplined guy. I've never had any behavior problems or anything like that, so I was a little worried, not guessing the reason for the call. Especially when I entered the office and saw that my parents were sitting there in a tense pose, nervously rubbing their hands. The vice director immediately stated that there were no complaints against me, and offered to sit down. As it turned out, on the same day, Miss Brown's teacher called my parents and said, "I forbid Jay to attend my classes." My parents were confused as I was still doing well in English. Let me remind you, this was my favorite subject, in which I received good grades. So Mom asked, "What do you mean? How can this be fixed?" Miss Brown was silent for a while, then said, "He just pisses me off, and I don't want to see him." She immediately interrupted the conversation, and left my parents perplexed by such a message. It was then that I told how the teacher showed my report card to the whole class, and what she said at the same time. Miss Brown spent the rest of the school year with her head down when communicating with me. Apparently, she almost lost her job. The teacher had serious problems because my parents threatened to sue the school, accusing Miss Brown of mistreating a student. The brazen bus behemoth gets what he deserves. Last week, I finished work and went to the bus stop to get home. It was rush hour. I had to skip 4 crowded buses and wait for the 5th one to be able to get inside. I found a seat next to a girl who put my backpack between her legs while people were jostling to get into the salon. The doors closed. There was very little room left for me to breathe, at least somehow. Next stop. One lady pushed her way to us and stood on the other side of the girl. The woman was no longer young, but definitely not old yet. I estimated her to be about 50 years old, but the passenger standing next to us used all the feminine tricks to hide her true age. The trip continued. With each bus stop, the girl pushed me more and more. Due to the heavy crush and stuffiness, I had breathing problems. But I noticed that the lady was taking up more and more space, and forced my neighbor to snuggle up to me more and more. 8 stops later, the girl got out of the cabin. The bus was half empty, but the woman continued to stand next to me. I still had 10 stops to go home, and every minute, I felt the lady pressing down on me with her whole body, not even trying to hide it. I made an attempt to move away to let her know, but the strange aunt pretended not to notice my movement to the side, and again persistently approached me closely. It should be noted that the last 3 weeks have been crazy for me. Heavy working hours and changes on the personal front caused a significant attack of melancholy. I was not in the best mood. In addition, I really hate people who use their age as an excuse for their strange behavior. So I stopped pushing off or moving aside, and let the impudent lady pin me down with her weight. When I saw that the woman was no longer holding on to the handrail to keep her balance, I just took a step away from her. I glanced around and noticed how she was falling to the floor. I just turned my head a little and smiled a little. Indifferent watch distorted from the wrath of a woman's face, knew it was something unpleasant about me, screamed. But I was wearing headphones, so I didn't react to her words, and silently turned away. Instant karma for cheating. It happened back in my school years. I was in the 5th grade at the time. My classmate is an inveterate bully with a hole in his head, let's call him John. He constantly bullied me and copied from excellent students. I'm not going to brag, but I'm kind of a nerd myself. Correct answers to the tests. The guy managed to sit with one of the good students every time, and you can't even imagine how I didn't like it. In our class, students are often forced to share their answers. I wanted to change the situation somehow and do something about it. So I decided to follow John to figure out how to punish him. I came up with the idea to slip silly wrong answers on a test. He just blindly copies as usual. At the end of our studies, we had to perform several important tests, which were control tests. They were given an annual assessment on the subject. I already knew at that time that John had problems with grammar. I wanted the guy to get extra lessons for a month during the summer holidays. So on the day of the test, I lured John to sit behind me. I had to negotiate with other children from whom he usually copied so that they would support me. My friend was sitting behind John. This was the first point of an inconspicuous revenge plan, so the test began. We began to carry out the second part of retribution. I kind of forgot my pen and asked for help from a friend who was my accomplice. A friend said, "I only have one pen, I can help you out, only when I finish my test." I replied, "It's okay, I'll start writing the answers with a pencil, then just cover them with a pen." As if nothing had happened, she began to perform a control test, and quickly coped with the task. It did not come as a surprise to me that John, who was sitting in the back and diligently copying, also finished the work. Then he was the first to hand over the work to the teacher, and, grinning impudently in my direction, left. I calmly deleted all the pencil notes that were complete nonsense, and actually rewrote the answers to the test. With a pen that I kept in my pocket, John got a big fat 0, and had to stay for a retake, as well as a couple of months of grammar at our favorite school. You can leave the story of epic revenge about your school in the comments, and get into the video. A well-thought-out revenge plan from a schoolgirl. A few years ago, a classmate from our school came up with an unusual revenge, protecting herself from bullies. As a teenager, the girl was quite a closed person. Her interest in serious sciences and classical music noticeably distinguished her from the bulk of school children. Her parents were an Indian-European couple. She inherited her mother's dark complexion and thick black hair. In this white school, most of the guys looked at the beautiful long braid that the girl braided from her hair. This hairstyle also attracted the attention of two mean and stupid teenagers who did not know how to keep their hands to themselves. These guys often had fun, unexpectedly grabbing a girl by the braid, and forced her to endure pain. They dragged her down the corridor. What a tin! Dragged along the corridor. Were you grabbed by the hair and dragged down the corridor? Cat, yes, it's not that. But there to pull the pigtail, I understand, but to grab the hair and drag it down the corridor. What? Cat, you don't compare. In history they drag you straight down the corridor. There you go. After this happened several times, a smart schoolgirl set a trap for the hooligans. The next scoundrel who grabbed her by the hair had a very painful experience. A smart and resourceful girl braided needles in her hair. She told me that she was proud of the elaborate trap in the spit for two reasons. First of all, it was done for defense purposes. Secondly, the action should be strictly proportional. The harder you grab the hair, the more you prick. A cunning plan of epic revenge from a firefighter. I've been told a lot of funny stories about my dad, but this is definitely my favorite. When my dad was young, he wanted to become a firefighter. At the fire station where he got a job, was there such a long tradition as spraying newly arrived guys with cold water from a hose. This was a funny initiation into the profession. Absolutely harmless, and without any malicious intent on the part of colleagues. This story happened right after graduation. It was summer outside. My father went to work for the first time on a bright sunny day. When he changed into his scrubs, he called the officer's fire station, and he dutifully went to the door. My dad knew he was the last of the new guys who hadn't been hosed down yet, so he kept his guard up. Instead of going outside to the place where the long fire hose was connected, he first looked out of the window. Of course, all the employees of the station stood in a crowd and watched the door that the father was supposed to leave. On the asphalt, Dad could make out the shadow of a man standing on the roof right above the front door, who was holding something like a hose in his hands. It was an obvious trap. My father shouted to his colleagues to give him a minute and returned back to the locker room. After a while, when the door swung open, a firefighter on the roof launches a waterfall over my dad. Dad just stands there motionless, completely drenched from head to toe in cold water. All the firefighters greet him and laugh at the newcomer, but soon they subside, realizing that my dad is strangely motionless, as if he is not there. The laughter has stopped. People are surprised and worried about what happened. When the water turned off, a brilliant trick invented by my father was revealed. He went to the locker room, rummaged through several lockers, and put on a stick the clothes of all the other newcomers who had already been initiated by water that day. The rookie guys who became real firefighters went home that day in wet and cold clothes, while my father came home feeling like a champion. Never argue with the bartender, he's 100% will have my revenge. Some time ago, I worked in a restaurant of a popular chain. I was a bartender there, but often took on shift service. I was often responsible for training our new employees, and to be honest, I preferred to train them so that they knew how to do this job correctly. One of the employees was in my training, a cute boy who got along great with customers. He literally bowed at the waist to please someone. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who cared about others as much as my student did at that time. I felt especially responsible for the guy and tried to protect him from all troubles. We worked the same shift. I was a bartender, and he served a big party, which was held next to my bar. I could listen to the conversations and see everything that was going on while the guy was serving these customers. The lady who, as I believed, was the ringleader and organizer of the party, did not give my G the slightest respite, and constantly clung to him, asking about dishes that we never had on the menu, of course, claiming that she had it last time. I noticed that the student was noticeably confused near the table. But, unfortunately, in our service, this is something that you should be able to cope with. I was very annoyed when the woman clicked her finger, beckoning the boy to order a song in honor of the birthday boy. In our establishment, they do not sing happy birthday to the tables, but we offer free ice cream with fruit. My G explained this, but the woman did not like such a replacement. She insisted on her own. The guy very politely offered to sing in person, but warned that he would sing alone, because other waiters most likely would not join. The client incredibly rudely ordered him to shut up. When he once again approached the table where the drunks were having fun, the cheeky person rudely ordered to bring another mojito, saying that I had prepared the drink badly. It should be noted that our establishments are located next to the hockey stadium, so on days when games are held there or not, we prepare drinks in different glasses. I was a little distracted that night and made a mojito in the wrong glass, so I did it all over again in the right glass, without any objections. Of course, she was a reptile, but I made a mistake myself when I used the wrong glass for a non-game day. Obviously, the client decided that she deserved more alcohol since I made a mistake. The woman sent the drink back to the bar and ordered the waiter to tell me to add more liquor to her. I was enraged by the words that the woman addressed to the bartender, more demanding and impudent. Make my drink stronger. So of course I turned it mojito drink with 0 alcohol content, with the exception of 2 drops of rum on the tube. The woman evidently enjoyed her strong drink and even ordered 2 more. Of course, I was amused watching this picture. Apparently, she liked to pay almost $30 for 3 drinks without even tasting a drop of liquor in the mojito. I smiled when the thought flashed through my mind, don't mock my colleague, and don't you dare insult my drinks. She got what she deserved for years of deception. When I graduated in high school, soon got a job in a small South Asian restaurant. I liked working there. I had the most pleasant colleagues, many of them who later became good friends. Of course, different visitors came to us. Rude customers also appeared, but usually there were few of them. But one woman was the craziest customer I've ever met in 4 years of working in the catering industry. During the lunch break, the bell rang. We take orders and process them often over the phone, so I picked up the phone and gave my usual cheerful greeting. A very cute-sounding woman named Sandy, God, I'll never forget her name, politely ordered fried rice. A fairly typical order. However, after that, the conversation became strange. She asked to add pineapple to rice, explained her whim by saying that pineapple is moist, and I like juicy pineapples, because without such an additive, rice is very dry. Without thinking about it at the time, I added pineapple to the order to the fried rice, and told the woman the time when it would be possible to pick up the finished dish. The kitchen fulfilled the order. I carefully put everything on the table, so that the food package is ready by the time the client arrives. She came to the restaurant to pick up the order and was very nice to me. The transaction went through without complications. The woman paid for the food. After that, I served the order. After I served the customer, she asked me to call the manager to tell him about a small misunderstanding. The woman, a little worried, told us, you know, this is my favorite restaurant, but the last time I was here, I ordered some of Mom's Ed. 2 girls were working that night. They looked very busy and must have forgotten about it. When I arrived home, I did not immediately discover that the order was incomplete. It didn't have my favorite dish in it. It was late, your restaurant had already closed, and I couldn't report it. I want you to fix this error. Mom did it to me now. Can I count on your understanding? I realized that it was all made up. We often encountered such customers when they ordered something incredible or did not receive part of the order, as usually stated in the claims to our service. My manager explained to the woman that it was necessary to call as soon as possible if her order did not meet the requirements, because we could fix it quickly. He promised with a pleasant smile on his face to immediately order a free edamame for the client, and personally make sure that the kitchen does everything urgently. He apologized to the client for the negligence and promised that it would never happen again. Fast forward to a month or so later, and I worked the same shift. Imperceptibly the day passed and evening came. It was time for dinner. I heard the phone ring, picked up the phone, and it was Sandy again. She ordered fried rice and started telling me about wet pineapples. I am usually a very friendly person, so I let the woman finish the story about juicy fruits that improve the taste of fried rice, and it becomes not so dry. Then he told the woman the time when it was possible to come to us for food. Soon Sandy appeared in the restaurant. Shift supervisor, he was in charge that evening, and performed the duties of a manager. Personally issued the order to a client. As soon as the woman paid for the order, she turned to him and asked, "You're in charge of the restaurant today. I need to tell you something. I want you to correct a mistake made in the service." "Yes, I can answer all your questions. What's bothering you?" Sandy with a forlorn look uttered learned by heart the text, without changing its never a word. "You know, this is my favorite restaurant. But the last time I was here, I ordered a little bit of edamame and so on in the text." She sounded like she'd thoroughly rehearsed this shit to win a damn Oscar statuette. Yes, after all, Sandy was a good actress in life. At that moment, I raised my head after hearing such a familiar text, because I hate most of all when they make an idiot of me. Before my shift supervisor was going to order a client, this mom was free to correct a mistake, as Sandy put it. I stepped in and said, "Ma'am, I don't mean to be rude, but the last time you were here, you were telling us the same story, and my manager gave you a free edamame." Sandy reacted instantly to my words. This was perceived by it as if I doubted the veracity of her story and tried to blame something. She started screaming that I stole her food myself and demanded that I be fired immediately. The woman looked at me with hatred and said that I had no right to talk to clients like that, and I was not fit to work in any place with such an attitude towards people. Then she looked me up and down contemptuously and said, "Stop, I remember you. You were behind the counter that day when I came for my order. And it was you who was working then and forgot to put my edamame in the order. I remember now, it was your mistake." The shift supervisor asked me to leave the counter and gave this vile woman a free edamame. I was told that the owner would find out about my behavior and that it was likely that I would receive disciplinary action. Of course, the next day this conflict was reported to the owner. I realized that it would be stupid to try to prove my justification, so I just told everything in order. About our first meeting with Andy and yesterday, I reassured myself that I would never see the nasty aunt again. The next day in the middle of the lunch rush, can you guess who is in the restaurant? Impudent liar Sandy. Not wanting to deal with this infection again, I hurried to get out of sight. She walked up to the counter with a bag of food and threw it on the table, informing the manager that she was here last night. The staff treated her terribly rudely and accused her of cheating. Sandy started shouting that this is my favorite restaurant, she is a regular customer of the institution. But yesterday we made a mistake in her order, and she couldn't eat any of the food she received because she had Crohn's disease. Most likely, another lie to get a free order. My manager apologized and then offered her a completely free lunch with her precious Mohamed. The woman decided to eat food at home. She sat down at a table while waiting for a bag of food to be prepared. The owner of the restaurant heard a noise in the hall and left his office. He saw Sandy walking through the hall and asked me if this lady was from yesterday's conflict. I said yes and prepared for an unpleasant moment when I was almost sure that I would have to apologize to the swindler for the accusation of slander inflicted on her. Instead, my boss came up to her, looked Sandy in the face and said, "I turned a blind eye to your antics, providing you with free moms ed for many years, so you have no right to treat my employees like this when they caught you cheating. Now get out of my restaurant. I never want to see you here again." Sandy didn't expect to hear such harsh words from the owner of her favorite restaurant. She couldn't say anything in response and ran out of the restaurant in tears. My boss came back to me and said, "Kid, I'm glad I never have to see that sly snake again. You're doing great. Thank you for finally catching an impudent client on the hot. I'm only 16 years old." All adult employees who heard the words of the owner were shocked by this turn of events, including me. When the free fried rice for Sandy with wet pineapple and edamame went unclaimed by the customer, I received this food as a gift and sucked every piece of delicious pineapple and edamame's precious dish. It was a delightful moment with instant karma in my life. We really never saw Sandy in our restaurant again. Revenge on the teacher. This story has become a legend in my family for a long time, and friends regularly come up with jokes on this topic. It happened a long time ago, and my friend advised me to share this story on Reddit, in the ideal revenge section. Well, why not? Background: at that time I was in high school, and let's just say, I was not the most capable student. I was a solid C student. But in my defense, I can say that I have never been late, or received comments about my behavior. This is important because to this day I still don't understand why the teacher treated me like that. Now about her. Teacher Mrs. Frank worked at our school for more than 10 years, and was widely known among school children for being very heartless. However, the administration simply idolized her. Mrs. Frank taught algebra, which is the most difficult subject for me. I never understood her. That's why I often ask questions in order to understand something at least. Yes, some questions are easy to answer, and any student can handle it, but for me it was comparable to rocket science. Usually when someone asks a stupid question, teachers may not answer it or ask another student to explain the material to the class. However, Mrs. Frank will not miss the opportunity to humiliate you in front of the whole class. Could she have said something like, "Seriously? Do you want to distract the class for such a small thing?" Or again, the slowest and not the smartest in the spotlight. I went to the administration once to report her behavior, but they told me that this is the best teacher in the whole school, and I'm just talking about the poor woman. Apparently, I was not the only one who complained, since somehow the administration was present at one lesson. However, before relying, she acted courteous, but when they left, Mrs. Frank turned into a monster. This went on for about 6 months, until I got tired of it. I went to a radio store instead, bought a dictaphone, and secretly recorded every insult. Sometimes even I provoked and egged her on. One day at the end of the school year, I asked one of those ridiculous questions. She replied, "I've been teaching here for over 10 years, and it was the stupidest question I've ever heard from anyone's mouth." She continued the lesson. I calmly got up, packed my things, and went to the medical center to take time off from school. I went home, collected all I'll write one magnificent masterpiece, and come back the next day to show authority. At first I showed the tape to the director, but he didn't listen to the rest, and said it was better to be heard in front of witnesses, in the presence of Mrs. Frank. The next day I was called to the director's office, where the local police, the director himself, his deputy, and Mrs. Frank were already there. I turned on the recording for them, and then watched them argue hotly. Mrs. Frank squirmed in front of the school administration, as if on a frying pan, tried to justify herself with all her might. Then the director said, "I think we have heard everything we need, thank you," and he asked me to go to class. But I stayed near the office to see what would happen next. When she came out, she was sobbing excitedly. I looked at her maliciously, and put on the most evil smile I could on my face. Of course, Mrs. Frank never returned to school again, and it is unlikely that after such a scandal, she was taken to work somewhere else. An inadequate driver gets what he deserves. It happened this morning, and I just couldn't help but share with you guys. I work at a construction site as a foreman. We are building a new apartment building. The place is quite strange. The house is 250 feet up, down the slope only on the footpath. All the construction material had to be dragged by hand. It's very hard that we were really helped out by 2 parking spaces on the street, at the bottom of the hill, marked with official signs there is no parking. Unfortunately, there is elementary school, and the parents of children constantly park there. I understand everything. There are not enough parking spaces at school, so if someone else's car doesn't bother us, we don't say anything. However, when the delivery arrives, we ask the parents to leave. Usually they agree without any problems, but not today. I received a notification that the lumber would arrive in 2 or 3 minutes. I said I would meet him and take care of the parking space so that you would understand the scale of the problem. If he parks at the bottom of the street, it will take him more than an hour to unload the material. If he parks in our places, then 3 times less. When I came to our parking lot, I saw a car with a woman sitting in it. I will show you to the car and politely ask you to leave, as a truck is coming now. She mocks me and rudely declares in response, I just need to wait a few minutes. Moreover, I don't see your truck. Before I can answer, the corner appears a giant truckload of lumber. I show her that the car has already arrived, and it's time for her to disappear. To which she responds, can't you unload nearby? God, it's not that hard. I smile at her again and leave. I order the driver to park the car as close to it as possible and block it. He smiles because he understood what was going on, so he easily executes my assignment. We start unloading, but we do it in such a way as to block the exit from the other side. At that moment I wasn't trying to get her into trouble, I just wanted to detain her while the police were coming, and teach her a little lesson. I called the cops, and they said they were coming soon. While we are unloading lumber, this lady's baby appears. And she only now realizes that the truck is parked so close that she can't get out. She couldn't open the driver's side door. After all, we blocked her from all sides, so she barely gets out of the passenger seat, comes up to us and says, I'm in a hurry. You need to move your damn truck right now. Before I can answer, the driver grins and says to ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck, we had to unfasten it. And in accordance with our company's policy, I have no right to transport a truck with loose cargo. I'm sorry. I can see how these words drove her right into a rage, while I can barely contain my laughter. I don't care about your politics, let me pass. At this moment, a parking control officer and the police appear. And I tell her, can't you just get the car out? It's not that hard. Go to hell. She screams, rushes back to her car, and gets back in through the passenger door. At this moment, the officer approaches me and the driver. It starts moving, crashes into a box of lumber, and then bounces to the curb, and starts moving along the sidewalk. The whole company of us, together with the officers, look at her in bewilderment. She's trying to get around the truck, but we can hear her getting stuck. The officer quickly approaches the car door, orders her to get out. My favorite part of the whole story is watching how her face was shrouded in fear when she realized that she had done all this in front of the police. She is handcuffed. She tries to justify herself by saying that no one told her that it is impossible to park there. The officer says that there is a sign for this, and this does not justify her. My guys finish unloading lumber, and the lady is charged with leaving the child in danger, improper driving, damage to other people's property, and driving under a suspended license. On top of that, her car was confiscated. The child was sent home with her grandmother, and she will spend some time in a cell. Revenge of a colleague. I work for a construction company, and we repair houses. We have a rule that we can hide everything we find behind the walls. We hired a guy from the very first day was crazy, really hard. I have been working for this company for 5 years, and this guy was engaged in construction for only 1 year, after he was fired from his job as an accountant for an affair in the workplace. Anyway, he always laughed at my clothes and my accent, and one day he went too far by showing my boss my personal Instagram photos. However, he didn't know that my boss was my friend from the age of 8. Of course, he told me everything. I was so angry that he violated my privacy, and then I decided to punish him. He was one of those guys who was always late, complaining about traffic jams or malfunctions in public transport. I once heard him say that if he wins the lottery, he will leave with this job, as he does not receive the respect he deserves. So one day I bought some fake gold coins online and put them in a metal box that I found in an antique store, and waited for an opportunity to hide it in the wall. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait long. The day he found the coins, it seemed like it was his best day. The first thing he did when he opened the box, he called my boss a loser and immediately left. He said, "This place is shit, now I'm rich." Lol, it was actually the best day of my life. After he left, my boss told us that he would have fired him anyway for always being late. I would like to see the look on his face when he finds out that the gold coins are fake. The best $40 I've spent in my life. Revenge of a classmate. It happened in the year 2018, when I was graduating from high school. A brief overview of the Swiss school system. You usually go to school until the 9th grade. If you want to go to university, you go to high school from the 8th to the 12th grade. I decided to get a higher education and went to high school. There I quickly became friends with Chelsea and Alicia. Alicia is very funny if there's not too much of her. She is always a victim, she can only talk about herself. She is also never responsible for what happens to her, because she grew up in a foster family and is constantly justified by this. So, this happened 2 months before our graduation. We had to take a test, which is half of your final grade. The other half is the last exam. The average score is made up of these assessments. Alicia's test score was not very high in all disciplines. She had to excel in most subjects in order to graduate. It seemed to push her, but she postponed everything to the last. We had a very difficult math exam, so I wrote notes on each topic and kept them in a folder in my locker. One day I noticed that my notes were missing. I was in shock. I searched for them for a whole week, and I had about 3 panic attacks. That's when Alicia accidentally told me that she took them when I asked her to take a book from her locker. In fact, she wasn't planning on telling me about it at all. And anyway, if like I didn't make copies, it's not her fault. She didn't just steal my notes. If I hadn't bothered her so much, she wouldn't even have said she took them. I was very angry, so a plan matured in my head. I didn't say a word. I apologized for the fight and just got on with my day. Alicia started calling me about notes. She chose the same books, so she didn't have to study extra. I started giving her wrong answers and faking notes. If she had been a little smarter, she would have looked at least one book that was listed in my folder, read it, and realized that I was deceiving her. I did the same with English, French, and chemistry and history. In the end, my average score was 538 in Switzerland, the rating from 1 to 6, and 321. She failed all the exams except mathematics. When she saw her grade, she paled. At that moment, I was trying to hide a smile. My boyfriend thinks it was cruel, but no. It was a lesson for her, because she should understand that if she does bad things, everything can come back like a boomerang. Now she's trying to try again. I hope Alicia won't steal other people's records now. Revenge on your teacher. A little background. My teacher knew my father because my father is a lawyer, represented his ex-wife a few years ago in a divorce. For some reason, he was taking his anger out on me. He constantly insulted me in front of the class. If I raised my hand to answer a question, he would roll his eyes before calling me and speak loudly to the class. Listen to what he says, and you will know that this is the wrong answer. He always criticized my work, commenting that I would never achieve anything, because, obviously, I have a learning disability. This teacher often lowered the grade for handwriting. When I asked my classmates about this, I found out that I was the only one who had their grades lowered for this. I know I'm not good at history, but the way I was treated was completely inappropriate. I began to worry a lot when I came to his lesson. I've been dreading this all day. My friends even accidentally mentioned it. What did you do to him, bro? My dad was furious when he found out the whole situation. Dad tried to transfer me to another class, but all the schools in our area were overcrowded. So, my dad never discussed the details of that case, but I heard him angrily telling my mom that he didn't like that I was in the class of a person who breathed unevenly to minors. A plan of revenge immediately appeared in my mind. I gathered in social networks photos of a girl who was a minor and went to a different school, and did a few sections in Kik, WhatsApp. I changed her name for obvious reasons. Then I sent a fake correspondence and photographs, which he allegedly sent her, the director and the main office of the school district. Within 3 days of sending the letters, he was fired. All we were told was that Mr. Smith had to take a leave of absence due to personal issues. I still don't know what happened to him after that. I graduated about 3 months after he was sent on vacation, and I never heard or saw him again. I joined the army and left town about 6 months after all this happened, and haven't been back since. One of my friends, who still lives there, told me that he saw a teacher working at a deli in a grocery store near the school. I've never told a soul, and no one knows it was me. The whole city was going crazy because of rumors that he could breathe unevenly to minors. I assume they tracked down the girl and asked her, but she obviously didn't know him. I don't regret it, but I would never go that far again. I was a sullen teenager, but when someone who has power over you is being bullied, you have to do something to protect yourself. To this day, I have no idea why my dad called him that. Maybe his ex-wife told my father about something when he was dealing with her divorce. The tone I heard was very convincing. Revenge on the restaurant manager. I worked at a pretty famous restaurant in a small northern New England as assistant manager. The owners were very successful restaurateurs with several successful non-chain establishments, and spent maybe a day or to a month at our place. The rest of the time, there was a general manager, we'll call her Yana. She was a middle-aged woman, but beautiful and petite. Yana started working for them 10 years ago in their first restaurant as a waitress, and over the years has reached the CEO. At first I just thought she had extremely high standards. I have high standards, and I am proud of my work. I was impressed that the kitchens were impeccable, the staff was impeccable, and the food was always of the highest quality. Yana was a tyrant. She was a kind of boss who spoiled the mood of the entire staff, like a thundercloud hanging over them, which never disappeared. Nothing was good enough, and the standards changed from day to day. If someone got sick, she scolded them on the phone and made them cry. If the cook made a mistake, she humiliated them in front of all the staff, accused them of doing it on purpose. As a fellow manager, I was basically spared from her terrible behavior. Raul also worked for us. He washed dishes in a restaurant. Raul moved to our state from Puerto Rico a few years ago and barely spoke English. Whenever I had to discuss something important with him, I took employees to translate for us. Yana did not do this, which complicated the relationship between them. Raul informed us that he had to take a second job to pay the bills. Ian said that he will fire him if he dares. Yana was furious, but through gritted teeth she agreed that if Raul did not go to a second job, she would increase his hours. I documented it in my diary. After that, the work continued as usual, and I didn't think about this meeting again for several months. Another time, while filling out the information for the tax return, Yana called me to the office. She was rushing around the office and telling me all the information about our employees from Puerto Rico had disappeared. I looked at the files in question, and everything seemed to be in order. So I was confused and said that can't help. A few minutes later, I returned to the office and found her arguing with Rosa, our most talented chef, and a native of Puerto Rico. Rosa spoke perfect English. Yana spoke to Rosa as if she was hard of hearing or mentally retarded. "Where is your green card? What are you talking about? You're illegal in the US, so you were in my office to hide the evidence." Yana didn't scream, but her eyes were cold and sparkling with rage. "What? Yana, you do realize that Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, right?" "Of course I know that." "Okay, so you know that Rosa has a social security number, just like any other American." "It doesn't matter, Rose, you can go back to work." Yana did not apologize for accusing Rose of theft. I received a job offer for a place closer to my home, and decided to accept it. In the last days of working at this restaurant, I was the closing manager and came in just before the lunch break. Suddenly I see Raul running out the back door. He was very angry. As it turned out, she also lied about increasing Raul's working hours, so he secretly found a side job. When Yana found out, she fired him with the words, "All of you illegals are the same." By this point, I also hated this woman. One day, she told me that my clothes made me look bad. I was wearing what she made me wear. Meanwhile, she was wearing open-toed shoes, which is contrary to sanitary standards. Since I knew I was going to leave soon anyway, I told Raul that he should go to our boss and tell him about the wrongful dismissal. After all, I had documentary evidence with Yana's signature, that he was promised more hours, and that Yana violated the agreement. The last time I saw Yana, she was leaving the office of Raul's lawyer, who was just talking about several labor laws that she had violated. She couldn't even look me in the eye. And yes, the most pleasant moment. As it turned out, she was actually the one who was in the country illegally. Her green card had recently expired. She was Canadian. As a result of this case, she was sent back to Canada, and no one has heard from her since. Raul received 6 months of unemployment benefits, plus the restaurant had to pay his legal expenses. They closed the place down shortly after this incident. Cat versus dog, nuclear revenge. As you can guess from the name, this is the punishment of one animal to another. Do you know why I consider such an action a nuclear revenge, and not just an act of revenge of an elderly domestic cat? Tell your story. There are 3 pets in our family. 2 sister cats who have been living here for almost 10 years, and a dog acquired 6 months ago. This dog, a little thief, from time to time goes down the stairs to my grandparents' room and eats cat food from their bowls. This went on for several months. At some point, our cats can only have one of them. They are tired of it. When they met a dog, they always hissed and snorted, trying to scare her. Soon we noticed that the dog was no longer happy with his feeding. When the dog ate cooked food, she often had diarrhea. It seems strange to us, since we buy only high-quality products. We always take meat from the butcher for homemade dog food fresh. My family has been feeding every dog we had for decades like this, and none of the animals have had digestive problems so far. We suspected that it was connected with our cats, as revenge for the thief of their food. Soon our assumption was confirmed. My grandfather came to my room an hour ago and said that the cat had marked its territory in a dog food bowl. And, most likely, not for the first time. Our peaceful old kitty, who regularly urinated in dog food, wanted to punish a small dirty boy, a young and stupid puppy, for stealing. Probably, the waste products that got into the food made the dog's food unsuitable for normal use and caused an eating disorder. The regular loss of food must have greatly angered our feline family, so retribution followed. Epic revenge from a pregnant woman. This story happened to my friend. She served in the army for many years. At the time of this incident, the woman was pregnant. The term is the third trimester. One day she was driving her car to a doctor's appointment and overtook someone on the road. The man who was driving got very angry, so he started chasing our heroine. He drove very recklessly, constantly swerving and swerving, to keep the overtaking car in sight. The chase had been going on for more than 20 minutes. The driver was persistently following the car, as if he was hunting for a victim. The woman did not know what the pursuer was up to when he raced after her, so she changed her route and headed for a military facility known to her. My friend's car pulled up to the gate. As soon as a pregnant woman reached the gate, she lowered windshield and called for help. Her face was bathed in tears. In this place, there was a military base surrounded by a high fence. The only way to get into the forbidden territory is to have a special permit. Anyone who drives up to the gate is required to present a government ID card. All the guards on duty at this gate were armed, not professional military. Agitated by the persecution, the woman was very scared. "I'm very worried." I told the guards that she is a serviceman, currently pregnant. Some madman was following her and chasing her in a car. Confirming her words, she showed her identity card to the guards, after which they let her into the base. The military believed the story and were ready to understand the situation. The abnormal rider, who arranged a suspicious ride, got out of a car to get closer to the gate. He wanted to get into a guarded facility and brazenly demanded to let him in. This behavior has resulted in the fact that the guards were forced to lie on the ground. The police were called. The violator was arrested for trying to enter a military base. How I taught my parents a lesson. A little glimpse into my life that I can tell you. It happened recently. I have a lump of earwax in one ear. It seems like a trifle, but last Monday it was really annoying, since I was in an online lesson and heard only half of what the teachers told me. My parents refused to make an appointment for me to see a doctor, because they considered this condition nonsense, because I could still hear, and it didn't hurt at all. I was angry that my father and mother ignored me, so I decided to pretend that I couldn't hear at all. When they got tired of shouting very loudly while talking to me, Mom still sent a message to the doctor. Immediately after I was scheduled to see a doctor, I began to hear much better. This story doesn't fall under the category of epic revenge, but I think my parents realized that my complaints about health are not a trifle. The nerd punishes the bully. I went to elementary school. At the time I was 9 years old. There was a very badass boy in our class who was the bane of everyone's existence. Let's call him Jack. The kid was an outright scoundrel, absolutely spoiled from head to toe. I always tried to mess up my classmates and was happy when I saw other children unhappy. I remember cases when my friend was climbing a tree, and Jack threw a stone at him and hit the boy's leg. Along with the bruise, a large bruise appeared. The bully will almost always go unpunished. He never got in trouble for such actions, because none of the adults saw it. In short, Jack is the real shit. This Friday he was particularly nasty and decided to make fun of me. Basically, he often pulled my hair and told me that I was a sissy. I didn't do anything else besides reading books, and called me various bad words. The scamp also insulted other children, shouted that they were useless and generally stupid people. While the raging bully was running around, causing harm to classmates, I quietly put down my book and went to the pantry. We always leave street shoes there. I found Jake's brand new, expensive, stylish shoes and took one of them. Only one. I took the shoe out of the pantry, then left the school, carefully looked around, and chose a suitable place in the schoolyard. I dug a hole as deep as possible in the sandy soil, and threw the stolen shoes into it. After the burial, she calmly returned to the classroom to her book. When my mom came to pick me up at school to take me home, Jake was still desperately looking for his shoe. His own mother, following on his heels, very loudly scolded her son for losing something so dear. I went home and was very pleased with my prank. As far as I know, they never found the second shoe. Here's an instant karma for a very badass guy. And nuclear revenge for a real pig. I went to college and lived together with other students in a big house. Each room in it was rented separately. At first everything was great. I quickly made friends with my neighbors. There were 4 rooms on the top floor of the building, and 1 large workshop downstairs. If there were any questions, we solved them immediately, without postponing for later. The girl who lived next to us categorically refused to clean up the garbage. The other tenants had no problems with this. We talked to the lazy girl several times about how she fills a full bag with garbage and leaves it at the door of the room. She always swore that she would improve, but she never kept her word. This neighbor is in some way my relative. It wasn't easy to communicate with her at all, although I can't say that she was absolutely terrible. Just very selfish. In any case, the time of study was coming to an end, and our neighbor began to prepare for departure. She was going to go home for the summer holidays. Therefore, every day I sorted through my things, checked the pantry, shelves and refrigerator, and threw everything unnecessary into garbage bags, which gradually accumulated in large quantities. One evening, my roommate and I were cleaning downstairs. The cleaning ended with garbage removal, so we went upstairs to warn everyone else about it. The next morning, we left the house and saw that the dumpster was again filled with various junk to the very top. Bags and boxes were strewn around him. We were amazed, because yesterday we conscientiously cleaned everything around and took out the garbage. It turns out that our brazen neighbor thoroughly cleaned the kitchen yesterday, including groceries. I left it all by the door of my room. I was too lazy to take out the trash at the time of our cleaning. But late at night, she deigned to remove all the accumulated trash from the apartment. When we dealt with the situation and found the culprit, the girl was still lying in bed, as she had a habit of sleeping for a long time. I was so enraged that the next moment I collected all the trash, carried it upstairs to the door of the neighbor's room, methodically took out every piece of garbage from bags and boxes, and carefully folded them in front of the entrance. The bedroom had French doors. I tried to completely block both doors with food waste, even wrapped some around the handles for the full success of our punishment. The pile of garbage turned out to be about 4 or 5 feet high. The doors opened inward. So when she woke up a little later and opened the door, all the garbage was in her room. The brazen girl had only one way out to collect and retake out all the garbage, and carefully sweep everything inside the room. I told the other guys living in our house what had happened. I hope the girl got a good lesson and made the right conclusions for herself. During the remaining few days, she lived without ever leaving garbage under the door. Of course, the neighbor took offense at us and no longer communicated with anyone, but we considered it our small victory. The snitch gets what he deserves. I recently turned 25 years old, but when I was about 20, I got a job in a construction company as a handyman and was engaged in general jobs. We took out garbage, cleaned buildings, and unloaded materials for work. There was one dude who I've known for a while. He was hanging out with our company. This guy never loved me or our family. I still don't know the reason for this hatred. Let's just call him a sneaky snitch in our story. Hostile towards me. Friend got the same work that I do with my brother. He worked with us side by side for a whole year. His presence at work did not last long. In the second year, the boss sent the guy away for vile slander. One day, after my brother and I finished cleaning the building and took out huge bags of construction debris with a container, we took a 5-minute break and got into my car. I lit a cigarette and my brother just rested. After the break, we went back to the building where he worked, and the boss called us to himself. The boss looked furious. He asked nervously, "Why the hell are you guys using illegal substances at work?" I answered him calmly that we were just relaxing. I was smoking a cigarette. Had slightly reduced it. But I was told that you smoked marijuana right in the car. These words puzzled me. No, let me tell you, I was just furious. And we had to justify ourselves. A few unpleasant minutes passed. Our manager believed the sincere explanations of both, and said he was sorry for his suspicions. According to a false denunciation, we could simply be arrested for no reason. A few days later, my brother and I came out of the back of the building, where the repair work was taking place. We again had to remove all the construction junk, and take out the garbage on the street. But guess what kind of surprise was waiting for us? We found out that the sneaky snitch was smoking marijuana himself in his car. So I took out my phone and started shooting it on video. The guy didn't notice us at all because he relaxed from the buzz. Snitch smokes a pipe, inhaling that shit. After each inhalation, blissful smiles. I recorded it for 10 seconds and got an excellent proof that allows me to punish the vile deceiver well. By that time we already knew who had whispered nonsense about us to the chief. At the end of the working day, I showed a video from my phone to my boss. After watching it, he was pretty stunned by what he saw and told me, "Are you kidding? This dude tried so hard, he went to meanness to frame you, sought your dismissal. Of course, as an employee, he is actually doing a good job with his duties, but I will immediately expel the scoundrel. Damn hypocrite and deceiver." Never saw the dude again after that day. The case presented me with a gift when I managed to catch a sneaky snitch on the hot and shoot a video on my phone. Everything that happens comes back like a boomerang. Places for lazy asses. I am attending a class with English. I was sent to group number 3 to create a video project. We don't have to all be present in class. Each group could do the work independently if it was required. So I was in the same group with 2 girls. The task was set. We had to write a script and everything to shoot an interesting video. Day after day passes. Our cinema has come to a standstill because my colleagues don't want to do anything. Now I'm really worried about my English class, as I almost failed with a similar project a year earlier. The girls from my group have told me several times that we will shoot a movie the next day. And I believed them. Came the next day. Again, nothing was done. The girlfriends refused to work and also said that I had to do everything myself, since I am a man. The time allotted for the preparation of the project was coming to an end. We have to provide it in 2 more days. Not wanting to fail, I wrote the script myself, but didn't make the video. The catch was that I didn't tell anyone about my departure from the band. On the day when the presentation came, I arranged a small show and demonstrated a colorfully illustrated text. The expression on the faces of my colleagues was beaming. They were waiting for the continuation. When the teacher invited the whole group to give grades for the work done, I told him that I had prepared the project alone, because the girls refused to work. 2 lazy girls sat in silence for 3 minutes, trying to imagine something they didn't know anything about. Lazy classmates got 0. And I got 92%. Meat of meat. One day she was driving in her car of my friend the fuck. Spoiled from head to toe. Always tried to mess up. And if you want more nuclear revenge stories, then write about it in the comments and like it. And then we will return the category.